and its pulse is gritted with sand and steel, fire and smoke. It's a city building its future together. One business, one family, and one home at a time. This is a place for makers, doers, and dreamers. It's where the global marketplace meets hometown values, where Americana isn't just a tradition, it's a way of life. Here, your experience makes the difference. With access to railroads, major waterways, and 8 different highways, this is a place in motion, sending goods, services, and ideas not just across the state, but across the world. And when the work ends, the day's just beginning, with beaches like West Beach in the Indiana Dunes National Park, exciting hiking and biking trails like the Diana of the Dunes Dare or the BMX track, and local treasures and exciting festivals, you'll know you're in more than just a bedroom community. From veterans of foreign wars to hometown heroes, our diversity is our strength, and we forge our future with the same flame as our steel. Oh, there's a place in the Midwest, and it's calling you home. The best part of Portage is what's next. The best part of Portage is you. There's more for you in Indiana. There's a place in the Midwest, 50 miles southeast of Chicago, nestled near the coast of Lake Michigan. It's a place driven by what's coming next, a place where industry is the lifeblood of its community, and its pulse is gritted with sand and steel, fire and smoke. It's a city building its future together. One business, one family, and one home at a time. This is a place for makers, doers, and dreamers. It's where the global marketplace meets hometown values, where Americana isn't just a tradition, it's a way of life. Here, your experience makes the difference. With access to railroads, major waterways, and 8 different highways, this is a place in motion, sending goods, services, and ideas not just across the state, but across the world. And when the work ends, the day's just beginning, with beaches like West Beach in the Indiana Dunes National Park, exciting hiking and biking trails like the Diana of the Dunes Dare or the BMX track, and local treasures and exciting festivals, you'll know you're in more than just a bedroom community. From veterans of foreign wars to hometown heroes, our diversity is our strength, and we forge our future with the same flame as our steel. Oh, there's a place in the Midwest, and it's calling you home. The best part of Portage is what's next. The best part of Portage is you. There's more for you in Indiana. There's a place in the Midwest, 50 miles southeast of Chicago, nestled near the coast of Lake Michigan. It's a place driven by what's coming next, a place where industry is the lifeblood of its community, and its pulse is gritted with sand and steel, fire and smoke. It's a city building its future together. One business, one family, and one home at a time. This is a place for makers, doers, and dreamers. It's where the global marketplace meets hometown values, where Americana isn't just a tradition, it's a way of life. Here, your experience makes the difference. With access to railroads, major waterways, and 8 different highways, this is a place in motion, sending goods, services, and ideas not just across the state, but across the world. And when the work ends, the day's just beginning, with beaches like West Beach in the Indiana Dunes National Park, exciting hiking and biking trails like the Diana of the Dunes Dare or the BMX track, and local treasures and exciting festivals, you'll know you're in more than just a bedroom community. From veterans of foreign wars to hometown heroes, our diversity is our strength, and we forge our future with the same flame as our steel. Oh, there's a place in the Midwest, and it's calling you home. The best part of Portage is what's next. The best part of Portage is you. There's more for you in Indiana. There's a place in the Midwest, 50 miles southeast of Chicago, nestled near the coast.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic Mr. Jackson. Mayor Bonta.
Present.
Oh, here.
Mr. Little. Mr. Simpson. Mr. Fleming. Ms. Lesko.
Here.
Mr. Burhans.
Here.
Attorney Dogan.
Here.
Approval of minutes for last meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the previous Port Authority meeting.
Any discussion?
Yes, I wanted to make sure that we added some minutes in when we were discussing the fishing pier. I'm not sure that this caught it, hopefully the video did, but I said that I did not feel the funding for this project should be put on the backbone of the slip owners. That was a statement I made. Mayor Bonta then agreed to it, and Jeff, I think you also agreed to it. It was not necessarily reflected verbatim in here in the minutes.
Okay, as stated, any other discussion?
Fish cleaning station is what I meant.
That's noted. Any other discussion? All in favor of passing minutes last meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, minutes pass.
Just as a point of order on the minutes, so not necessarily that we have to reflect this, at the end, it mentioned the motion passed, 5 yea, 2 no, and it listed the people who were there. According to the bylaws of the Port Authority, the chairman/president is only there to vote if in the need of a tie. So different things have different ways, so just in the future, I just wanted to point that out.
Also noted. All right, we'll move on to the treasurer's report. Buddy?
We'll start with the marina. Marina's got $235,548.82. Port Authority has $109,459.11.
Okay, thank you. Need a motion to approve that, I believe, right?
Motion approved.
All right, we have a first and second. Any discussion on the treasurer's report? All in favor of passing, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Treasurer's report passes. Move on to claims.
Motion to approve the claims.
I'll second.
All right, open for discussion. All in favor of passing the claims report, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Claims report passes. Thank you. All right, moving on to committee, Mr. Dogan.
Yes, for a legal report, I have reviewed the temporary construction workspace easement that I think you all have. It was in the package and sent out via email from Virginia, and it seems to all be in order. The basic terms, I think you all know, it's $1,000 for approximately 7 months. They can extend it for $200 a month more after that 7 months. Commences June 1, ends December 31 of '25. Of note, they will repair any damage to crops, existing fences, or existing improvements, so our crops are safe. And that is all.
All right, so this is being presented to us because we're the owner of the property and we crossed their easement. Is that the gist of this?
Well, I think you're confusing two different concepts. This is actually an easement over some of our land that we own for them to do construction improvements and things like that. This wouldn't, this is really an unrelated matter to the fact that, yeah,
Okay, so this is at the marina property.
correct. This is an easement over property that the Port Authority owns, not that same property that you were just referring to.
Okay, thanks for the clarification. Anything else tonight, Tom?
No, that's all.
All right, thanks. Move on to marina facility. Barb?
Kind of a short report tonight. We are collecting deposits every day for 2025. So far, we have received 93 deposits. They've been made with an additional 19 paid in full. Collections are going well. It's a little too early to tell who will not be returning to the marina. There's been a handful that have notified us that they're not returning in 2025. So we'll be calling and reminding current slip holders who have not made their deposits that they will forfeit their slips, and then we will go ahead and release those slips to the next people on our waiting list. Very few daily launches now that the weather is freezing and fish are not biting. Number 3, the bubblers are doing their job, so there's really no ice buildup, but if we go into a prolonged deep freeze, there will be some ice, but the bubblers will keep it at a minimum. Just to let everybody know that I've been requesting reimbursement for grant dollars we have spent. The total submitted to the Indiana Department of Natural Resources so far is $135,611.99. I was told it will take approximately 4 to 6 weeks for the funds to appear in our bank account. And that's all I have right now. Any questions?
Any idea what portion of the 135 is for the fishing pier?
No, but I can break that down for you at the next meeting, break down the figures. I kind of combined them all. That's for both the fish cleaning pier and the fish cleaning station, but I can break them down
Okay.
next month.
That'd be great. And this is our first request for reimbursement, correct?
Yes, and I was told by the DNR that this money will, it's going to take 4 to 6 weeks at a minimum. It may take longer. So Virginia and I are trying to keep tabs on when we receive it, and I'll make sure that everybody is made aware that we have received it.
Okay, great, thanks. Next, we have safety. Dave, anything to report?
There has been nothing to report since the water is pretty darn cold to go down there and inspect it. So, yes, a little bit warmer, I promise I'll be out there.
I think it's 69 days till spring.
What's your definition of a little bit warmer?
All right, anything on planning and development? I know Matt is not here. I will say I spoke to him earlier today. He is stating we are days away from delivery of the fishing pier. It comes in sections. There is currently no installation due to the weather, but at least delivery is forthcoming. As far as the engagement that he's had to Hassie, they have received our bond and our certificate of insurance, and they are meeting next week to start evaluating the quote. So we should have something in the next couple weeks. With that, we'll move on to old business. Nothing under old business. How about new business? All right, the NIPSCO item is listed here again. I believe everything was covered. So with that, then we move on to election of officers. That is on our January agenda every year. We will need a motion for those positions.
I'd like to nominate Jeff Fleming for president or chairman of the Port Authority Board.
Well, second.
Okay. All in favor on that, or is there any discussion? I guess we'll open that up first.
Just to say, I think you'll do a good job, as you've done.
Okay, well, thank you on that.
Thank you, Jeff, for all your years of service to the board. It's very much appreciated.
Thanks, Barb. Any other discussion?
Congratulations, again.
All right, well, I think we'll take the roll call. All in favor of me retaining my position, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes. Move on to the next position, Vice Chair.
I'd like to nominate Austin Bonta.
I'll accept the nomination if someone seconds, of course.
Second.
Okay, open for discussion.
Thank you, Mayor, for stepping up.
Absolutely. Happy to learn more about how the board works and be a little bit more involved.
Okay, great. Move on to vote. All in favor of this position being filled by Austin, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes. Move on to Treasurer.
I nominate Carl Simpson.
And I would like to nominate Mr. Jackson.
I'll second the nomination for Ron Jackson.
I would vote in approval for Ron.
I would accept that.
All right, open for discussion. No discussion? All in favor of
I'll
Ron
just say,
Jackson?
I know I joke about you and me being the guys on the sidelines here, but I think that might have just changed, but I'm happy for you.
Thank you.
All right, with that, let's move on to...
We vote? I think.
Vote.
Oh.
We have to vote still, yeah.
You're moving on. I'm like, wait, I do think we got to vote. Yeah, okay, so we're good. Yeah.
All right, all in favor of Ron Jackson filling that position of treasurer, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Recording secretary.
I'd like to nominate the wonderful lady to my right, Virginia Perez, to continue as recording secretary.
Second.
Well, there's not another option, right?
Technically, this is this is a little bit more procedural. Like, I mean, it's kind of like when you pick an attorney, it's on one hand, you technically can, but if you don't pick the one that's budgeted for, you do probably run into, well, it's actually a little different with this board because this board does have its own budget. So to be fair, we're happy to have you.
All right, well, I assume we'll have an all in favor of aye, but let's vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Continuation of Virginia. And now we have to move to the approval of the '25 budget. You should all have copy of the budgets. And we are noting here that there are two separate budgets, one for the marina, one for the Port Authority, so we will look at those independently. The marina budget up first.
I'd just like to say that there was a lot of work that went into this marina budget. I discussed with the clerk treasurer's office, and the reason the budget is about $200,000 lower than it was in the past because of previous clerk treasurer officer mistakes that were made in inflating the budget. we have to have a budget that agrees with, that comes close to our, what we collect in funds. So you will notice that the marina budget is $480,000.53.
All right,
Oh, one more thing on the marina budget, and then this will also carry over to the Port Authority budget. I was told that board members should not receive payment for the services to the board that they sit on. But I'm not sure that that's true, because according to what the Port Authority dictates, the state and the local code for Port Authority states that the Port Authority Board can set compensation how they see fit for board members.
That is correct. Well, it's correct that we can set, maybe you go ahead, Attorney. Yeah.
Well, I was about to say what you were about to say. This board appoints or approves its officers and sets all salaries for those, all sitting committee members. So, yeah, the board can certainly pay the committee members.
And on that note, choosing to go down to $1 or even 0 is a decision the board has the ability to make. I know that this has the proposal to bring this down to 0. I know that nobody here does this for the money, But that said, in a time where the city is in financial hardship, I think that it's important that all elements of the city, where they can, set a good example, and in this case, bring that down. I'm open, of course, for discussion when we go into the discussion phase, but it should be noted that it is a significant change, as is the change in estimated revenue. But at the same time, as noted, there's not any boats really using the marina right now, so it's not good to have a budget that suggests that people are paying for slips right now.
All right, obviously, we've had some discussion or some notation of such, but let's move on, get a motion on this, and then we can open up for further discussion.
Well, I'll motion to approve the, are we doing the marina first, or are we doing I'll motion to approve the marina budget.
I'll second.
All right, let's continue discussion on the budget.
So Barbara, I heard your comment that you worked and the budget needs to be based on anticipated revenue and balancing it with anticipated costs.
Close to anticipated revenue, Carl, as close as we can get. At 600, when it was 600 and some thousand dollars, we would never, that was inflated to the point where we can't budget for that because we don't take that in.
So the challenge is that in past years, the budget estimated revenue, which we have to use when we set the budget there, what would happen is it seems like what happened is they would take the amount that we more or less are making in the slip fees and then double it as if there was a second season of slip fees, going up to that $600,000 mark that we've never, to my knowledge, Barb, we've never hit $600,000 in revenue. And so if you have a budget that says you're going to get, that you expect $600,000 in revenue, but you never have, you eventually got to realize that you need to set the budget for the revenue that you have coming in. That's not to say that we can't make plans in the future to increase our revenue, but we have to start with a budget that sets what we reasonably expect.
When was the budget ever set at $600,000? I mean, over the years, it's been around, averaging around, revenue's been $425, $435. Now, I know we've had some price increases, so I see the revenue year-to-date on the report of $456.95. So that's a little bit over an at, but what year was it ever budgeted at 600?
We're talking about the part of the budget that talks about the estimated revenue that we have coming in. So when I came in, I guess last year, 2024, we had a budget that was based on $600,000 of revenue. And it's not the only part of the city's budgets where we've had that issue. We experienced that in parks and some others, but when we got to actually planning for this year's budget, it was one of the first things noted by the city's financial consultant is we can't find a history of the marina making that much money. And they said, so therefore, you got to take down the estimated revenue from 600 to something that's reasonable. So, yeah, no, I agree with you. We've never made 600, but we've been telling the state of Indiana for a time that that's what we expect to make, which leads to a budget that doesn't match.
Who's been telling the state that? I mean, obviously, we've approved budgets before and have always been around 425, 35 on revenue. So it wasn't this board telling the state?
Not this board like directly, but the board by voting on the budget that was in front of you. It had the things that were sent to the state that said we estimate, not we, us, or me, the new mayor, but the state of Indiana has been told in the past that this is expected to bring in $600,000 in revenue. And to be fair, any time that you're trying to do a budget and you're trying to put in estimated revenue, you might not always be right. Nobody in 2019 could have guessed what revenue was going to come in 2020 accurately. So say you're a park department, for example, you've got potentially a reasonable expectation of like rentals in 2020 based on all the years that there wasn't a pandemic, and then comes 2020 and you suddenly don't have anywhere near the rentals you have. So it's not as if that something was inherently wrong, but there is something wrong when you start making budgets that estimate revenue coming in more than you could expect it to be, So to go back to your point, it's not an issue of the actual money that's been spent that we're extending to spend, but we have to switch to what we're telling the state we're expecting to get. The 2024 budget that was, I'm guessing, passed in either 2023 or wouldn't have been either that or early 2024, was based on information in 2023 that the marina was going to get at least 600 grand in revenue for 2024. We did not, and nor should we have expected to, in my opinion.
And Carl, those budgets, I have copies of the previous budgets. Those were budgets that the clerk treasurer submitted to the gateway, which is where the city budgets and the salaries and municipalities punch all their numbers into. So I've got copies of that. I'll send you copies of the previous budgets that show those figures.
And Carl, to help answer the question a little more, one of the things that was a significant change in 2024, it'll be a change again in 2025, the city budget used to be a very collaborative process, for better or worse. And I say that because sometimes things went very well overall, sometimes things didn't go so well. But it was a whole process that was used where you had city council had a committee involved in making the budget, the clerk treasurer's office was involved in big decisions for that, the mayor's office chipped in. State statute states that the mayor's office is what provides the budget. And I came in, there's nothing wrong with previous mayors choosing to delegate or bring more people in, but I came in with a very strong expectation that it would be myself and my staff that would prepare the 2025 budget. Now, I'll also add that's a big risk for me because I can't point any fingers if something goes wrong in 2025 in any spot. But to explain some issues of, how do certain things happen, that's the difference between having a committee do something versus having an executive do something. And I hope that makes sense.
I understand what you're saying now. I just don't, I know every budget that we've passed in the last few years has been around the 400, low 400,000. So where the 600 is coming from, I don't understand. Obviously, it's not coming from this board.
And for clarity on that, so Barb, you're saying our budget submitted to clerk treasurer's escalating the budget and submission.
The projected revenue. So we have to tell the state every year how much revenue we expect to bring in the following year. That's the number that we believe has been, let's say, overly optimistic on in past years.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Well, if we had had a $600,000 budget, we'd be in huge trouble because we would have like at least a $200,000 deficit every year, and that would have really caught on that something was wrong.
So in front of us tonight is the expense side of the budget, correct?
That's correct.
I have an issue with the expense side of the budget not allocating for an increase in pay for the harbor master.
I don't disagree with that. The question that we had there is that we have to have, and Barb, you can correct me if this is wrong, or attorney can correct me, One of the things I was told is that still needs to be approved by the city council as the salary ordinance update. The issue we ran into, and if you didn't follow the city council meetings in November and December, I don't blame you. I don't recommend going back and watching. One of the things that was attempted was to pass a salary ordinance update that covered multiple different positions at once. And what we found is it's very tough to do that as an omnibus salary ordinance update. So what we're doing going into the next city council meeting, and hopefully not too many more passed, it'll be a process, we're doing individual salary ordinance changes. So we'll have one for the harbor master, we'll have one for sanitary plant director, for example, we'll have one for HR, we'll have one for people who work for the clerk treasurer's office, to allow the city council to vote on those individually. To simply, I hope that makes sense. Now, going back to the point of setting things, if this board has the ability to adjust it on our own, and if that's backed by legal, that is okay. I just want to make sure I understand the relationship between salary ordinance by the city and this board, but I'll turn that over to our attorney.
Yeah, if I may, I sort of disagree with the first thing you said about, it's been a matter of convenience, I think, and just, usability that the city's been doing our payroll and accounting and things like that. But we are an independent body, and we set our officers, and we set officers and employees' salaries independent of the city. That would be my legal opinion.
So if we have the revenue to be able to do an increase of pay for the harbor master, you are saying that we have the authority to do that unilaterally?
Absolutely.
I don't.
This board does.
Problem with that, I just wanted to make sure I had the right legal guidance on that.
Okay, so us having the authority, then we make a motion to approve this budget with that adjustment? And does that then flow through?
It sounds like we have the ability to. I think the question would be the right way to negotiate that, not to, put Barb on the spot, but I do think that, not everybody, interviews for a raise in front of the whole, city on video. And
We
again,
can
I
always-
I want to apologize for being unprepared, because it's very clear to me that perhaps if Attorney Dogan and I had talked, that's a criticism of me, if anything. This could have been resolved sooner, and we would have prepped that in,
And we have the ability to, and we have done in the past, is made salary increases retroactive. So we can take this to another meeting if we'd like.
I would even be okay with if we wanted to get a special meeting scheduled to be a little bit sooner, but to Carl's point, we can do a retroactive salary increase. That way we, I know that Barb is a very tough, person. I know that you're probably capable of arguing that here, but I'd be happy to do whatever you'd prefer to do there to make sure that's done in a proper way.
I'm fine with whatever the board decides that the proper way to proceed would be, Mayor.
Sure thing. For the record, you absolutely deserve a raise, and that's why I was prepping for it with all the other ones we're doing. It's just we might have to cancel on the city council side of that then, if that's the case.
Well,
Because
then
I was under the impression this was getting fixed on Tuesday next week, whereas now, if we can do it on our own, that's good, but it does change the timeline.
If it goes next Tuesday before the council, we don't know the decision they may make.
Not necessarily, and to our attorney's point, they might not technically have the authority to do it, even if we believed we did in the past.
Yeah, I agree with Mayor. The city would not have the right to veto what this board does. This board is an independent organization from the city of Portage, and it manages itself by statute. The only connection with the city that I recall from the statutes is that the city council should approve the appointees that the mayor makes to the board. But that wouldn't be who's president, who's vice president. This board decides that, and this board decides all salaries that should be paid.
And for clarification, and it's okay, we don't always have to have the answer here. For the record, I enjoy how much this board just talks these things out. It's a very nice way compared to the, strictness of some, but doesn't the city council, if we were to do a bond, wouldn't that also have to be approved by the city council as almost an overseeing body, or am I incorrect? I know that's true for some of the bonds we've had to handle with RDC. I'm not claiming we're doing a bond, by the way, but I believe that's another example where the city council does have some oversight over this body, unless I'm incorrect. Don't know right now. We don't have to comment on things we don't know. but
I'm
if
not certain of that, but actually, I believe this body is an independent authority, as if it is a city or it is a port authority. It's created by Indiana statute. It has the right to govern itself, set its own salaries, and as to a bond, I don't know that that would be true unless the city was participating in the bond, then of course it would be true.
Let's make sure that we know that for sure before we ever have to go down that road. That sounds like a good one, but I guess what I would wonder is, Barb, I know that you and we've talked. Would you mind maybe even meeting with me? I think tomorrow we're both going to the same thing in the morning, or it's tomorrow with the park, right? Yeah.
8 o'clock tomorrow morning.
I'd be
and
happy to
9.
meet with you, get that set
Yeah,
up,
sure.
and then we can certainly make that, to Carl's point, retro when we do it at our next meeting.
Okay, sure.
Thank you, and
Thank
you
you.
deserve it, so thank you.
Well, thank you.
Okay, then we'll expect that, and then we can move forward from there on that particular subject. Other discussions on the marina budget?
So Jeff, as you mentioned before, this is the expense side of the budget. Is that correct?
My understanding,
Okay.
what I'm seeing.
There should be information there that also tells, I think, the revenue reports, I believe, and some of the appropriation reports. I didn't dig through exactly, but if you saw me kind of doing this earlier in the meeting, I was kind of trying to find and review some of that.
The board per diem here is a $0 amount, and I know that was a brief discussion earlier, so what's the clarity on that?
To put it simply, it's something that we've been moving to as a trend with our other city boards, is bringing that down to 0. A lot of that is for budgetary purposes because the city overall is we've been facing a struggle, financially for some time, and you reach a point where, again, I'll just use an example with a different board, You bring up, oh man, the city of Portage is struggling, over here, and someone says, well, that's interesting, you guys are paying people on boards, not talking about Port Authority, talking about a different board, and they're like, it's kind of hard for you guys to say you're struggling when you're paying people for things that other entities, other municipal units aren't paying for. And so in certain spots, we've already addressed that, but it was kind of our default spot when it came to per diems, is putting the money towards the overall operations. Now, as noted, this body approves its own, so we can't immediately just, how to put it, we're not bound to that, but that was our default position was, quite frankly, I don't think any of us do this for the money,
No, I agree with that last statement. So this budget does not include any compensation for the board members.
But here, no. And as noted, this board can change that if that's the opinion of the board, as long as it's within the money that we have. But that was the default with all of the boards.
And if I may ask, as the liaison from the city council, compensation for Port Authority board members is a relatively recent occurrence, is that correct?
Not really. It's a few years. It's
Yeah, it's been a few years.
probably like 5 or
3, 4,
6 years,
5.
maybe,
It's
yeah.
been during my tenure as liaison, so yeah, within the last few years. So I'm talking, it hasn't been a decades-long practice. Is that
No.
correct?
It started out at $50, and probably 3 or 4 years ago, it was moved to $100
And that's per year?
per meeting.
See, to give you an idea, we've got other boards that are just $150 to $300 for the year. This is actually probably percentage-wise, definitely one of the highest paid boards. Previously has been, I guess that's what's up tonight,
Yeah, maybe previous, yeah.
Was on the plan commission, I recall it was $300 for the whole year, and you get paid an $150 check, twice a year. And I remember telling people, at first, I used to say it was just enough to make you feel guilty, if you weren't coming. But paying per meeting, to that tune, I definitely felt that that's very high. But that was not a particular issue with this board. Like I say, moving towards non-compensation for boards is something that was a default for us as we went through all the budgets. I would note that the redevelopment commission, I don't believe, has ever paid anything, nor has the sanitary or storm board since their inception. Of course, the utility board, that was not the case. But similarly with the Board of Works, which, Board of Works handles almost, again, minus entities like this, all of the general fund expenditures in the city is handled by the Board of Works. Members of the Board of Works are required to come in every other Tuesday at 10:30. They manage literally millions of dollars in the city general fund, and despite having to come in at 10:30, which for most of us means, in my case, I'm already working here, but for everybody else, leaving work with permission, they're not compensated at all. And so I do think that when you look at the other boards, looking at some of what the other ones are doing non-compensated, we got to think about how much are we compensating for boards that aren't necessarily handling the same revenue as, let's say, Redevelopment Commission or Board of Works. I can't stress, these are my own opinions. I'm just speaking to them as a board member here.
Okay, thank you for the clarity on the change. Any further discussion on this budget that we have in front of us?
I'm trying to find some paperwork too, but have we really ever spent that much money in a year, expenses? Because I always thought expenses were around 375 a year, which should have given us basically a positive 50 plus that we were going to use, we were using to pay off the bonds, and then we were supposed to be banking to use for future projects.
Carl, that's correct. So Attorney Dogan, do we need to vote tonight on the compensation issue for board members? Because checks have been issued for last year. Do we need to take care of that tonight, or?
Well, my answer to you for anything involving last year, no. If you want to change anything, you should take a vote. It doesn't necessarily have to be tonight. You could do it retroactively or however you choose to do it.
Just don't want to be in a position where we have to send money back. That creates kind of a mess, I'm sure, right, Virginia?
All right, just continue the open discussion.
So in doing the basic math, it's between $8,000 to $10,000 in compensation that we would relinquish and say, I would gladly oblige that if it helps the marina.
I think, as noted, given a raise to the harbor master, I mean, I certainly think that that helps, put towards that. I'm just doing the math in my head, of course, but I'm just thinking,
Agreed, 100%.
And for further clarity, this is the budget format that the city's using throughout?
Yes, if you're just talking like how it physically looks with all the categories there, that's just across the board what the city, has used and, continues to use.
Yeah,
This
it's in a different format than we have used.
Yeah,
That's why I'm stating such.
Sure. This is what was given to me, and again, it was explained to me as this is about the same, layout with the way it's done with the lines and the categories, subcategories, but again, I'm on year 2 now, so I'm sure there might be a history that I don't know.
I'll assume I'm correct in saying we need to pass the budget, and then we can make amendments post this passing, as stated. Important this meeting that we pass this budget, correct?
I think we definitely should have a budget, going forward from this meeting, and yes, we certainly can. I'm sure the attorney would back up, amend the budget but I think we do need to pass a budget tonight, would be best practice. Do you know if our budget, does this directly go to the state for review, the way that, the general fund budget, does go through DLGF, or does it run a little differently for us?
No, I think we're considered an entity that is probably audited just like everything else in DLGF.
And I say that because in Indiana, usually when that's the case, the state then reviews your budget, and then they can turn around and also cut your budget, which I know was big on our mind when we went through this, because as noted, there comes a point where you can't justify your budget anymore if you're not showing that you're basing it off what the actual previous expenses were,
Yeah, that's correct. And actually, a point maybe that I should emphasize is that the board should probably look at this as a recommended budget that the city has done a lot of work on and, provided to you. But do you need to follow this? No, you're your own entity. You set your own wages, your own salaries, and your own officers.
And if I could use some Dan Bowditch language, just, because I'm picking up on, the way you say it, would it be fair to say that unlike certain budgets of other entities, similar to redevelopment, could you call this more of a living budget?
Yeah, I would agree with that, but here's maybe a point to be made. The other departments you're speaking of are departments of the city.
Absolutely.
This is not a department of the city. It's a separate political entity that has connection with the city, of course, but and is within the city limits, but
Sure.
It is its own separate entity, unlike those other boards that I think you've been discussing.
It is nice that the city lets us meet here, for sure, though.
All right, are we still open with discussion, or are we ready to make a vote on this current budget? And we'll need a motion to do so, and I think we should add the couple points that we made.
My first comment is, this, once again, these are very big dollars, and we had a lot of good discussion on it, but it would have been nice to have a little bit more notice up front that this is going on. I know in the past years, we had to turn the budget in October to get it approval to be sent downstate. So now here we are in January, trying to approve a budget that's for the current year. And the numbers just don't match what they were in the past, so I'm still leery on the whole thing.
What I would say is that, our numbers are based on a concern that revenue is not going to come in the way it's previously been estimated, for better or worse. So hopefully, to put it really simply, we cut it enough. But certainly, if revenue comes in higher, I would say that that's at the very least a good thing, But I don't necessarily expect the revenue to come in higher than we estimate to reflect the budget. It's just to say, we didn't go too high with this budget. We actually went very low and very careful, but still accounting for concerns about inflation, which the optimist in me, I won't get into detail, is a little bit more optimistic that maybe the economy is going to get better. But what I will say is that we were very, very cautious with how we put this budget together for 2025.
It would have been nice to have last year's budget so we could compare it to, because I'm just going on history right now. But as I stated before, historically, expenses have been around the $375,000, and revenue has been around $425,000. So you're saying you're reducing it, but you're actually increasing on the expenditures to match a revenue that's never been generated before.
Well, no, it was the 2024 budget where we know that the revenue that was expected to come in was much higher than what came in.
What document shows that? I'm sorry, but
The 2024 budget.
you're not talking about the marina budget, then you're talking about what the city sent downstate.
We have to send a budget downstate, and in previous years, the amount of projected revenue that we've always told the state, speaking as the city, the Port Authority, what have you, the amount of revenue that the state's been told we anticipate coming in has never actually lived up to that revenue. And there comes a point after multiple years of telling the state you're going to get a higher amount of money than you get, that eventually the state stops believing you. If you've got a park, and I'm just making up a number because I'm not going to quote it offhand, if it's 2019 and a city in Indiana tells the state of Indiana they think the park's going to generate $500,000 in revenue in rentals, well, 2020 happens, the state's going to say, yeah, of course, there's no way you could have predicted that. But then you get to 2021, 22, 23, and you keep giving that number and you never get over, let's say, 400,000. Eventually, the state says, hey, I think these guys are estimating too high. And then they start saying, because your revenue is not as high as you're saying it is, there starts to be a problem. So what we've done is we've adjusted to what we expect revenue to be. It's still higher than maybe some, but we also have to anticipate that some revenue is going to increase because we're also expecting expenses to increase. But what we're not expecting is over $600,000.
So the budget expectation is revenue is going to be an equal to expense.
Is the goal, the hope, and what we're working on.
So then it's our job to drive the expense down.
Yes, and hopefully drive the revenue up. Be amazing is if we make $600,000 this year and I say, guys, I promise I didn't think that was going to happen, but I want to state on record I don't think that's going to happen.
Okay, clearly a different way than we've done prior, but do we have all the clarity on the table now?
As I said, I don't have the documents from years past, but I will bring them to the next meeting. So we can further discuss at that time. Once again, if we have to move forward with this, I guess we shouldn't stop. I mean, the numbers don't make sense compared to history. Austin, you and I are stating it different ways, but what we're passing now does not reflect the history since I've been on the board.
History in terms of expense?
Revenue. Revenue has been 425.
I agree with you that that's what actual revenue has been, but the state's been told that in 2024 it was going to be over 600, and it wasn't. And so now we need to adjust to something that we can estimate that still allows us to have a budget that we're proposing is balanced or at least funded, because we have to have a budget that is at least funded.
I fully understand that, but I would like to see the document that we sent downstate last year. Now, it's not coming from this board. This board did not approve a $600,000 revenue budget last year, so it had to come from some other place. And I would like to know where that place is.
We can get that all together and we can bring it to the next meeting. I'm happy to do that. I can even invite Buzz Crone or one of his associates, such as Stephen, who did the main work in putting our budgets together, and he can explain the history of budgets as we've done them, because both Buzz and Steve do an excellent job. Steve has a slightly better bedside manner, but they're both brilliant. I think Ferdinand can back me up on that.
I totally appreciate Carl's concern, because if, the numbers should be very simple. Here's how many slips you have, here's what you charge for the slips, and here's what your salaries are. Maintenance is the other thing that you have to budget for, and that's the X factor in all of this. So the numbers should never have been projected $200,000, $150,000 higher. So I see Carl's concern in this.
No, I agree, it never should have happened. And again, whether or not it was what the board understood when past budgets were made, I can't speak to. All I know is that when I sat down with the consultants, they said, do you know how confusing and messed up this, Port Authority Marina budget is? I said, no, I don't even know how that could be. And then they showed me, and I'm like, oh yeah, well, we do need to fix that then.
Agreed.
Yeah, I agree too. And if you could bring them for next meeting for further clarity, and we'll be prepared for that
Absolutely.
discussion. That would
And
be
certainly
awesome.
if there's, certainly if things are better than what was presented by the consultants or what got prepared for, we can amend the budget. But I think that for now, we're in a good starting point.
And I've retained all of our budgets for every single year, and I will, like I said before, Carl, I will email those to you tomorrow.
But however,
I would say send
that's
those out
our
to
budget.
everybody.
that
Yeah.
we've devised. So the problem therein lies is who's upgrading our budget and submitting it to the state.
Well, and being as careful as I can, the city of Portage, and I'm including us, not because we are the city, as noted, we're separate from the general fund or other things, but in the past, and we're going to keep working on this, but there have been all sorts of confusing things that we dealt with even from the start of last year. I mean, there were items that the police believe was in their budget that we discovered in January last year were not, and so we had to remedy that with the help of like RDC. And so we're like, okay, we got to make sure that whatever happened in past years where, you know, people thought the budget was one thing and that turned out to be another is fixed. And I believe we've done that. We're going to be checking to make sure that there's nothing in the 2025 budget that doesn't make sense compared to what was done in 2024. But the city of Portage, unfortunately, has had a history of budgets not always matching what people thought they were voting on, either at the council level or perhaps here too. If you want to talk to the cops about what happened, they can tell you it's quite a story, but we did get it fixed in 2024, and then we've got it fixed now in 2025.
Glad to hear that.
Okay, again, it's a different approach this year, and we'll have some more clarity next month. We do need to have a motion to pass the budget as stated in front of us, and then we can drive further decisions. My apologies. We do have the motions on the floor. So now we need to move to vote on passing this budget. So with that, all in favor of passing this budget, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Abstain.
Okay, motion passes. Now we have the Port Authority budget in front of us.
Motion to approve the Port Authority budget as it's presented to us.
Second?
Okay, we have first, second, to open discussion.
Barb, I believe these numbers are pretty much in line with what we've had for the last 5, 6 decades. Basically, we're expecting around 25,000 income, and that's what our expenses are can be on a bad year.
That's correct.
Okay, further discussion.
I can just back up that, yeah, the Port Authority didn't have nearly the same issues when brought up when we were looking it over as we did with the marina.
But now, looking at this, the actual line items we've got $10,000 in engineering. Is that based on historical? And then we've got only 5,000 in channel maintenance. I know that used to be a little bit higher.
I do believe that we pulled about maybe 3,000 to 4,000 out of channel maintenance and put it into engineering to compensate for the Abbott Marsh, the fees from Abbott Marsh.
Barb, I believe, and you know this as a department head actually better than I would as the mayor, within the budget, and I might actually need the help with the attorney, because again, I apologize if I'm using general fund speak when I need to be using Port Authority speak. Within the general fund budget, just to compare, there are certain expenditures where, depending on what category they're in, the department head has the ability to move money just by an immediate transfer. And then there's others where to move money from one spot to another based on their category, it takes a vote from the fiscal body, usually the city council and the general fund end. Barb, I wish I remembered offhand, but I believe we might have had some discussion about that there too. sometimes it's easier, I don't mean to say strategy-wise, but in your financial planning, to put it in one, knowing that if an expense comes in the other, it's easier to move it than it is to try to move one to the other for efficiency's sake. I don't recall if that was part of this discussion. It's just, it's coming to mind as I'm looking at it, to answer Carl's question, perhaps.
Austin, you are 100% correct on that. If you look at the categories, like, for example, Port Authority, it's one category. We could transfer anything from category to category, but if we needed to borrow money to the Port Authority from the marina, that would have to go before council approval, to transfer out of one category, a main category.
This isn't as dramatic as some in other departments, let's say, but I think that there might have been something to be said for, it seemed easier or better to plan for 10,000 in engineering, knowing that if things went up in the other, we could move out, as opposed to have 10,000 in another, and then if we needed more for engineering, pulling it out of the other. Again, I'm not claiming that's the history, because I don't remember point blank, but that makes sense to me.
And Austin, that is the history. That's how things have been done in the past. And that goes for all city departments.
All right, other discussion on the Port Authority budget? All in favor of passing this budget, say aye.
Aye?
Any opposed?
Abstain.
Okay, budget passes. Okay, that is both budgets. We'll move on to public input. Any public input tonight?
I believe we have at least one person coming up. It's good to see you. See you again, because saw you earlier at the other two.
Absolutely. Good evening.
If you could tell us your name and address, please.
I am going to give my name. I've previously given the name Good Citizen. That was because when I came one time, I was told that I had to give my name, and I understand the request, but, the Constitution, the Fourth Amendment, we don't have to give our name to petition or speak to our government. It's, something that can be asked, but, that would be, essentially relinquishing your constitutional rights if you're forced. And then subsequent to that, there was, what I label a condescending comment made to myself from no one sitting here today, but someone in a position of leadership that was, sitting here based on me representing myself as good citizen. And, so I continue to represent myself as good citizen as a, civil protest to just that. That being said, I've come to a lot of meetings. I find meetings to be exciting. I love letting my daughter see what's going on, and, as I told the mayor, I feel, this is, and I'm going to give my comments, but I feel like just the city leadership has earned me giving my name because I think that you all are great public servants. So with that, I'm Rod Moyer, Portage, Indiana. Hello. So yeah, so this is great. The public doesn't necessarily, want to become expertise in the nuts and bolts of everything, but they want to know that the public, servants and representatives are, serving their interests for the public, and that's what I feel. I'm not sure this gentleman's name here, but like at the beginning of the meeting, the fact that he's paying attention to the minutes. I was at that last meeting, and I remember those comments that you made about not wanting the funding to be put on, some group, and then you come here today and you recognize that that's not in the minutes. So if you're not paying attention or taking things seriously, you're not even going to worry about that. So that's a little thing, but when the public sees that, to the public, it's like, okay, this is a group that is taking their responsibility and role seriously. There are a lot of, public bodies, there's a lot of nonsense that goes on. People are, whether having, certain types of just personal relationships, members of boards in different cities, across the country. I'm not saying any particular city, but you see these things, and, I love taking my daughter to, it's very entertaining. It's unfortunate for the residents of, those particular cities because they're not getting the services that they need. And you turn around in those cities, the garbage isn't being picked up, the sewage, all these things that you don't think about. But when people are in positions of leadership and, whether using it for themselves or whatever the case may be, not being, transparent, great representatives for the public. The public is the ones, who loses. So my perception is that, this board is good. I love seeing, I don't know if pushback is the right word, but to the mayor's comments, a lot of places they might, I don't want to say anything, to the mayor, but that's what a great board is going to do. It's going to have some, discussion, and everyone's going to share their perspective. So my comment is that I appreciate, this board. That's what it appears to do, this, leadership, and that's what the public sees. It's really simple. The public isn't all, there's some levels of the public that are into all the nuts and bolts and details, but are we serving the public or are we not? And that's a very remedial way to look at it, but, I thank this board for serving the public, and that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Rod.
for coming, and thank you for bringing your daughter. Hopefully, she enjoyed it.
She got so excited to watch you come up to speak, so I don't know if she's going to tell you that, but I saw the smile.
Very good. We have
Sorry
more
if I
public
shouldn't have said
input
that.
here.
Sorry.
Yes, good evening, everybody. My name is Rick Miazga, also a good citizen, I might add. Thank you. And I, too, was excited to bring my daughter here and show her this experience because probably a little over a year ago, we got some results that we really didn't care to hear for in the city council meeting, and my daughter started to cry, and I said, man, are you okay? And I went to take her out, and she's like, no. She said, did we lose, Dad? I said, no, we didn't lose. They just showed us we have to find another way to win. So in such, she was very good at helping me politic and at the call center, helping Mr. Mayor Bonta get elected. And if I may, I'd like to read a little passage that was laying on my kitchen table one night that has since been submitted to the mayor. Dear Austin Bonta, our marina needs true love and work, and the Miazga household truly believes that you're the person to do it. My father, Richard Miazga, is really dedicated to what he is trying to prove about the Portage Port Authority upgrade on the handicap fishing pier at Sammy L. Maletta Portage Public Marina. Again, it really needs true love. I'm only 9, but this expansion needs to be stoked. If you get elected, I know you will do the best job you ever did. Sincere, Allison Miazga. So in doing that, I mean, I was very proud of my little girl, but I think she realized that I wasn't spending a lot of time at home because I was coming to those meetings, I was getting involved, I was talking to the people, I was counting the number of lights that were not working, I was trying to help mitigate some of these claims and lawsuits that come to us before they even happen, because we were in pretty rough shape. And I'd like to say that we are in a better shape this year than we have been in a long time, but we're not there yet. We still got a lot of work to do. And I'm happy that you guys took the step and, kind of shoving some of your money back into the middle of the table, because I'm putting all my money in the middle of the table too. I haven't been paid for the last year and a half I've been coming here, but it's important to me, and I'm glad it's important to you, and thank you. Go whoever is playing Notre Dame tonight. I'm not a big fan.
And Rick, I still have the letter, so thank you.
If you'd like, I've got the originals.
That would be amazing, actually, if that's okay.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Rick.
Do you need the whole book back, or, oh,
All
okay.
right.
Okay, if I find anything weird, I'm going to bring it to the attorney, but otherwise, no. Thank you.
Motion for adjournment.
Wow.
Second?
Everybody else wants to stay. Well, I think we got a second down there. Meeting adjourned.